tonight on NewsCenter. President Park Geun-hye orders the military to boost its security across the nation as North Korea ups its threats against the South, claiming to turn Seoul's top office into a sea of flames. 20 days left until voting day for the 20th National Assembly election. We give you a wrap-up of the twists and turns in the nation's political realm. What to expect and what still remains murky, we'll have the details. And a massive manhunt is underway to track down those behind Tuesday's deadly terror attacks in Brussels, as people all around the world mourn online and offline for Belgium. The Korean government, one of them. NewsCenter begins right now. It is 10 a.m. in Buenos Aires, 2 p.m. in Brussels, and 10 on a Thursday night here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to our viewers all across the globe. You're watching Arirang News Center. Now we begin with South Korea's response to North Korea's latest barrage of threats, launching verbal attacks on the South presidential office and the president herself. The top office has ordered the military to up its alert level against what it called Pyongyang's challenge to the world. Arirang News Presidential Office correspondent Song Ji-sun starts us off.
A direct, explicit announcement of an attack targeting the president of South Korea. Seoul is taking the issue seriously and defined Pyongyang's provocation not just a direct challenge to South Korea, but towards the world.
It's a challenge and threat to the Republic of Korea and our president, and a direct challenge to the world. Considering the severity of North Korea's threats, President Park has ordered defense readiness to be reinforced to guarantee the safety of our people, and called on the public to be prepared for any emergency.
Denouncing the annual South Korea-U.S. joint military drills, Pyongyang state-run media on Wednesday broadcast that it will remove the South Korean president by specifically targeting the top office with its military and special forces. Seoul's Unification Ministry on the same day responded that Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions is what's heightened attention on the Korean peninsula, and that the North should choose to change its ways. At a standing National Security Council meeting, the South Korean government also ordered all relevant agencies to prepare necessary countermeasures, with South Korea's defense ministry saying it has been on full standby for any provocation since Pyongyang's fourth nuclear test in January. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now we're getting news that South Korea's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Lee Sun-jin, called for an emergency meeting of his military commanders earlier this evening. Now this just hours after President Park called on the military to beef up readiness against any provocations from the north. Live on the line is our national defense correspondent, Kim Hyun-bin. Now, Hyun-bin, what do we know about this meeting?
South Korea's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Lee Sun-jin, convened an emergency meeting with his commanders and called on the forces to sternly punish the North in case of any provocations. Now, during the 30-minute meeting on Thursday, he evaluated the country's defense readiness to counter threats from the North. Now, Pyongyang accused Seoul of staging a drill on what it claims was meant to destroy the office of Kim Jong-un. Now, South Korea's Air Force conducted a simulation on Monday targeting key military facilities in the north and flew 16 fighter jets carrying precision-guided missiles, escorting a transport plane carrying a batch of special forces. Now, North Korea views its leader as a state supreme dignity that its people must protect under any circumstances, even at the cost of their lives. Now, South Korea is currently undergoing the largest joint military exercise with the U.S., and its military has been on high alert since North Korea conducted its fourth nuclear test in January. Now, North Korea calls the drills an exercise for northward invasion, while Seoul and Washington say the exercise are purely defensive in nature. The joint exercise is scheduled to run through the end of April. Back to you, Kanya.
All right, thank you, Hyun-bin, for the agile reporting. Our defense correspondent, Kim Hyun-bin. Now, North Korea's belligerent rhetoric against South Korea has become somewhat of a routine, especially during this time of the year when the annual Seoul-Washington joint military drills gets underway. But this time around, they are getting very close to crossing this line. Pyongyang has upped its verbal threats to new heights this year, especially coupled with its nuclear and long-range missile tests in the past couple of months. Our Connie Kim walks us through North Korea's bellicose rhetoric so far and its possible next step.
North Korea fired 6 rounds of a large-caliber multiple rocket launcher on the heels of an announcement of the strongest UN sanctions on the regime to date. Since the South Korea-US joint military exercises kicked off early March, North Korea fired 9 short and mid-range ballistic missiles in an apparent protest to the drills. The young North Korean leader also boasted about the state's nuclear capabilities advancement. Pyongyang claimed to have miniaturized a nuclear warhead to fit on ballistic missiles. It also said it acquired nuclear warhead re-entry technology and successfully conducted a solid-fuel rocket engine. Seoul's defense ministry dismissed the North's nuclear warhead miniaturization, an atmospheric re-entry claim, while it acknowledged Pyongyang is in its early stages of developing solid-fuel rockets. North Korea was also bold in slamming the South, with Kim Jong-un calling on the South Korean President Park Geun-hye by name and saying that it'll start a retaliatory battle of justice to eliminate the president and her supporters. Slandering of words is typical during the annual South Korea-US joint drills, but North Korea's belligerent rhetoric had raised tensions to new heights this year. Experts on Pyongyang say the North's reaction was a predicted one, and its intention lies on gaining an upper hand in negotiations, following its 4th nuclear test and long-range ballistic missile launch.
North Korea will likely increase nuclear activities and movements in launching a long-range missile to pressure the international community and South Korea. If Pyongyang doesn't get what it wants, there is a possibility the young leader will forge ahead with an additional nuclear test or missile launch before and after the Workers' Party Congress in May.
South Korea says it'll sternly respond to any additional provocations from the North and continue to urge Pyongyang to give up its nuclear weapons ambitions. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the UN Human Rights Council has adopted a resolution on North Korea's human rights record. Our Kwon So-ah shares with us the latest in a series of efforts made by the international community to find ways to legally hold accountable the regime for its crimes against its own people.
At its 31st session in Geneva on Wednesday, the 47 members of the UN Human Rights Council adopted a resolution on North Korea's human rights violations. They decided to set up a group of experts that will look into ways to make North Korea accountable for its human rights abuses. One of their tasks will include finding a legal pathway for referring Pyongyang's leadership to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The resolution was jointly requested by the European Union and Japan earlier this year and adopted without a vote. The Council assesses North Korea's human rights situation as remaining of serious concern, with arbitrary killings, torture, and unlawful detention. It also pointed out the discrimination and violence against women and restrictions of freedoms of expression. The South Korean government on Thursday welcomed the move, condemning Pyongyang's lavish spending into its nuclear and missile programs and urging the regime to immediately take necessary measures for its people to live a humane life.
The adoption of the resolution by overwhelming support is very meaningful in that it reflects the international community's big concerns about North Korea's human rights record.
6 council members, however, were not on the same page as most others. Russia and North Korea's closest ally, China, were said to have disassociated themselves from the voting process ahead of the decision. North Korea's mission to the UN was quick to respond, rejecting the resolution in a statement, calling it politically motivated. The UN Human Rights Council's resolution comes less than a month after the UN Security Council passed a resolution against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats, putting even more pressure on Pyongyang. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, just 20 days remain before Koreans head to the polls to elect the members of this country's 20th National Assembly, and Korea's political parties are scrambling to get last-minute preparations done before the April contest. Now, to give us the latest overview of the twists and turns in the political realm, our political correspondent Ji Myung-gil is live in the studio with me. Now, Myung-gil, let's first take a look at the campaign trail.
Good evening, Kanyong. Well, Korea's political parties have almost finished filling up their candidate lists to run in 253 constituencies. Also, the two-day candidate registration started today. Now let's take a look at some of the contested regions. If we look at Seoul, we have former Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon running in the Chongno-gu district, facing liberal bigwig Chung Se-gyun of the main opposition Minju Party of Korea. In the Noan-si district, we have the minor opposition People's Party co-leader An Chol-soo competing with the ruling Saenuri Party's rookie Lee Jun-seok, who will spearhead efforts to win young voters. In the Malpo A district, we have Saenuri's An Dae-hee, a former Supreme Court justice, competing against Minju Party's second-term lawmaker Dong Ne. Looking at the conservative stronghold regions, we have Saenuri's chairman Kim Moo-sung for the Yeongdo constituency in Busan, and we have former Saenuri's floor leader Yoo Sung-min running as an independent in Daegu Dongbi district. At the liberal home turf regions, we have former presidential candidate Chung Dong-young running under the People's Party for Cheonju City, while the People's Party co-leader Chun Jung-bae is running for the Gwangju Seobi district.
Now, Miguel, internal strife, political feuds have been within each party even have been dominating the political arena in the last couple of weeks, with drastic changes happening by the day. Political figures, key figures leaving one party for another, and candidate endorsements shifting from one group of politicians to another. It's even hard to keep track of what's going on. So do give us a briefing on that.
Well, that is so true as what you said, but the ruling Saenuri Party is still struggling with its own factional strife, while the main opposition Minju Party is back on track with the help of the current interim leader Kim Jong-in. The different factions within each rival parties have had a tug of war trying to get party tickets for their candidates in the upcoming polls. Three Saenuri heavyweights who are non-loyalists to President Park Geun-hye will be running as independents, and dozens of lawmakers have defected from the Minju Party.
Well, what's also very interesting this time is that we head into this parliamentary elections under a three-party system. What is the significance of being or going into elections under this three political party system?
Yes, Korea didn't have a three-way political party system for 20 years, but experts seem a bit skeptical about whether the minor opposition People's Party could secure enough seats.
Well, I think that all depends on whether or not the People's Party actually is able to win 20 seats. And right now, I am a little skeptical. I think at the end of the day, it will become obvious that the possibility of having a viable third party in Korea is very, very difficult. Which is very.
The April general election is considered a bellwether, as it could largely reshape the political landscape ahead of the presidential election coming up next year. So which party has the greatest potential to win, Myung-gil?
Well, we'll have to wait and see, but it will certainly be seen as a barometer of public sentiment and evaluation of the parties. But experts say the ruling party could have the upper hand, though not with a huge victory.
A lot of voters are now being fed up with the existing political parties, and that's going to call for some kind of a reform down the road. But at the end of the day, if you're just concerned about this particular election, I would probably predict that the ruling party would still prevail.
And to just give a brief wrap-up of what's coming ahead, the official election campaigns will start on March 31st.
Well, I look forward to an exciting election coverage by our political team, of course, sure. With you in it. And thank you, Myung-gil, for tonight.
Anytime, Kanya.
With the 20th general election just around the corner, there's a special exhibition here at the National Museum of Korea's Contemporary History in downtown Seoul. It gives us a visual tour of the footsteps of Korea's election system. From the very first election in 1948, Korea's election system went through tumultuous times, from representative elections to rigged elections to now free and direct elections. Therefore, the history of elections here in Korea also represents the history of democracy in the Republic of Korea. Now, from that very first vote 68 years ago, Korea's election system and Korea's democracy have matured to now even embrace the right to vote for Korean nationals living overseas as well. The National Election Commission of the Republic of Korea. Voting day for the 20th National Assembly election may be roughly 3 weeks away on April 13th for Koreans living in this country. But for Korean nationals living overseas, it begins in less than a week from today. Overseas voting system gives Korean nationals living in different parts of the world the right to express their voice in homeland politics.
The overseas voting system was introduced in 2009. And the practice of overseas voting was conducted in 2 elections, National Assembly election and presidential election in 2012.
While the number of eligible voters abroad, it stands at roughly 2 million. Voter registration and turnout rates have been rather disappointing in the last 2 elections where overseas voting was practiced. Out of the small number registered, those who actually showed up to cast their ballots during the voting period have been even more mediocre. Voter turnout during the 2012 general election came at just above 45%, and the presidential race roughly 70%. For the National Assembly election this year, voter registration tallied at 7.8%, or 154,000 of some 1.98 million eligible electorates. Have there been measures taken by the National Election Commission to improve the convenience, to better the convenience for these overseas voters to come out and really exercise their right to vote?
According to division of the election law, the overseas voters could register on website of National Election Commission of the Republic of Korea easily by themselves. And we put on another polling station in the district that is far from Korean embassy. We expend a lot of money for overseas voting, and some people criticize why we expend a lot of money for overseas voting. The people don't pay taxes, and the low the participation, but we respect the right to vote. Either the people live in inside Korea or abroad.
All right, well, as the saying goes, patriotism begins in the voting booth, and for all eligible Korean voters living overseas, it's an opportunity to start taking part in Korean politics and to keep in touch with homeland. Now, with less than a week left until overseas Koreans begin to cast ballots to elect the nation's members of parliament, Korean embassies and missions in major cities around the world are busy with last-minute efforts to encourage voters to come out and vote. We connect with the electoral attachés at the Republic of Korea missions in Japan and the United States, countries with some of the largest population of overseas Koreans. Counselors, thank you for speaking with us tonight. You now have less than a week left to gear up for the big day. How are preparations going? Well, first, Counselor Kim in Tokyo, and then we'll head over to Counselor Yoon in Los Angeles in that order, please.
Our embassy has two main tasks left for the remaining days: letting more overseas Koreans know of the voting system where their respective polling booths are located, and reminding them to come out and vote. As candidate lists become finalized, we will continue to roll out reminders on various Korean-Japanese newspapers, such as the Mindan Shinbun, One Korea Daily News, and online communities for Korean students and mums living here in Japan.
I think we need to now focus on last-minute promotions to encourage more voters to come out and cast their ballots, as well as making sure all goes as planned during the voting period. With a change in the election law this time around, we have added 2 additional polling stations in the LA district, one in Orange County and another in San Diego County. For the next couple of days, we plan to make sure those new polling locations are all set and ready to go.
Well, I'm sure these couple of days leading up to the actual voting period will not only be the busiest time for all of our diplomatic missions across the globe, but a very critical time as well. Now, with only a few days left, what is the mood there like on the ground? This time again, we'll go with Tokyo first and then LA. Councillors.
I can't say that the election participation mood here in Japan is all that positive. That's because the overall number of Korean nationals in Japan dropped by half, as many students and expats returned to Korea after the March 11th Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. Another factor is a general belief among some Koreans here who took part in the first overseas voting in the 2012 parliamentary election, that elections at home don't necessarily bring direct benefits to Koreans living abroad. However, we do believe more eligible voters will participate in next year's presidential election. I think what we need to do from here on is to come up with various ways to improve the current system so that overseas voting can become more convenient and accessible for Koreans living overseas.
As for here in the United States, election mood seems to be building up as the overall interest in politics and elections are high, with the primaries for the U.S. presidential election underway as well. Compared to the 2012 general election, 3,600 more Koreans have registered to vote, although compared to the presidential race, the number is smaller by 3,200. The registration rate during the 2012 general election was 2.3%, but the rate this time is double that at 5%. One of the biggest inconveniences that voters in the U.S. experience is the long distance to the polling stations. For instance, for Korean voters living in Las Vegas or Phoenix to cast their ballots, they would have to drive 6-7 hours to get to the Consul General's office here in L.A. That is a huge discouragement for them.
Well, I'm sure more improvements will be made as we carry out more overseas votings for the upcoming presidential election and many more elections to come. Thank you both for speaking with us tonight. All of us here in Korea wish you all the best in successfully carrying out Korea's 20th legislative elections in your respective countries. That was Korea's electoral attachés in Tokyo and Los Angeles, 2 cities with some of the largest eligible voters Korea's population. Now, for all Koreans watching Arirang News Center from abroad, let me remind you again, voting for overseas Koreans kicks off next Wednesday, March 30th, for 6 days up until April 4th at 198 polling stations across the globe. Voting is a right, exercise your right, and have a say in your homeland politics. It's been 2 days since the terrorist attacks ripped through Brussels, and so far 3 suspects have been identified, with another unknown suspect on the run. Reports of a 5th suspect are also emerging. As the manhunt continues, uncomfortable questions are being raised of the Belgian authorities on such horrendous terrorist attacks could have happened. Kwon Jang-ho has the latest.
Belgian authorities are currently on the hunt for at least 2 men who were directly involved with the Tuesday bombings at a metro station and airport in Brussels. According to French and Belgian media, the first is a new suspect who was spotted on CCTV cameras accompanying the metro station bomber Khalid El-Bakraoui just before the attack. The man has not yet been identified, and it is not clear whether he was killed at the scene or is on the run. The second is a man seen at the airport with the two suicide bombers, one of whom who has been identified as Khalid's brother, Ibrahim Bakrawi. It is believed that this man fled the scene after his bomb failed to detonate. 31 people are confirmed to have been killed in the attack so far. An additional 61 people are in critical condition, 4 of whom are in a coma and haven't yet been identified, so authorities have only named a handful of the deceased victims so far. Identification has been difficult due to the damage done by the attacks and the number of foreigners among the victims. Foreigners still waiting to hear from missing loved ones have turned to social media and news outlets to try and find them. Meanwhile, the attacks have raised questions about what has been done or missed to prevent them. The 3 named suspects were known to have links to the Islamic State cell responsible for the Paris attacks in November last year. Ibrahim el-Bakrawi had even been arrested and deported from Turkey in June, but the Belgian authorities did not extradite him as they felt there was no specific information linking him to terrorism. EU Interior and Justice Ministers will be holding an emergency meeting in Brussels on Thursday to discuss how to move forward. The only surviving suspect of the Paris attacks, Salah Abdeslam, was arrested in Brussels last week and was due in court for a hearing on Thursday, but it has now been postponed till April. According to his lawyer, he has denied any prior knowledge about Tuesday's attacks. He also added that the suspect does not oppose extradition back to France. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
As the hunt for those responsible of Tuesday's attacks in Brussels continue, tributes and vigils are being held in Belgium and all over Europe under the now famous phrase, Je suis Bruxelles. Now, this in addition to several global landmarks lighting up in the Belgian national colors as a mark of solidarity. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
A crowd of Brussels residents held a vigil to commemorate those who died in the Brussels attacks that killed more than 30 people and wounded hundreds. Chants of solidarité, or solidarity, were heard among the night prayers.
We came here to say no to terror, to show some solidarity with those who lost some relatives, because it could happen to anyone. It could be us, our children, our parents. So we came here to say no to hatred, stop terrorism, and to say that terrorism doesn't have a religion.
The first victim identified is 36-year-old Peruvian Adelma Tafia Ruiz, who is married to a Belgian and mother of twin baby daughters. She was on her way to New York for Easter with her family but lost her life as the bombs went off at the departure area where she stood waiting for her flight. Her husband and the twins were luckily on the other side of the airport during the attacks and survived. And it's not only the Belgians who are mourning for the victims. The colors of the Belgian flag were projected on various iconic landmarks around the world. Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se also sent his condolences by paying a visit to the Belgian embassy in Seoul. Foreign Minister Yoon said in his written condolences that he is against the brutal acts of terrorism that have took so many innocent lives in Belgium, adding that Tuesday's bombings are an attack against not only Brussels but also against the rest of the international community. He also said the Korean government will stand against such terrorist acts, as the country is not free from such threats. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry arrives in Brussels on Friday to express condolences to the victims and families on behalf of the United States. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, shifting gears, Korea is one country that's renowned for its temple food. Unlike other Buddhist nations like Thailand and Cambodia, where temple or Buddhist cuisine never really flourished because their clergy receive food from their followers. Our Lee Ji-won gives us a taste of that cuisine through a trip to an expo currently underway right here in Seoul.
Korean temple food is developing a reputation around the world for its clean taste and health benefits. The vegan cuisine is made with fresh seasonal ingredients and is free of spices and MSG. The simplicity of the food makes it flavorful but not overpowering, teaching people to eat with restraint according to Buddhist teachings on moderation.
What we take in makes us who we are. Therefore, temple food is good for people as it is clean and simple yet healthy, like medicine for the body. We grow our own ingredients, and by using the least amount of seasoning, it's light and easy to digest.
Temple food was one of the biggest attractions for visitors to this year's Seoul International Buddhism Expo, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year.
The taste is very light and clean, but also delicious as it's scented with the lotus leaf. I'm really grateful to nature for providing such wonderful flavors.
Korea's temple food is very healthy for the body and it's got very beautiful colors. We enjoy eating it.
The taste and potential health benefits of Korean temple cuisine is also attracting attention from people overseas. At the Milan Expo last year, visitors flocked to the booth by the Korean Culture Ministry and the Cultural Corps of Korean Buddhism, displaying temple food. Visitors there praised the cuisine as the epitome of slow food, a movement that began in Italy as an alternative to fast food. Temple food was also enjoyed by the diplomats of OECD delegations attending Korea's National Day in Paris last year, where the process of preparing, serving, and enjoying the cuisine was called an art in and of itself. With the government promoting temple food as part of the Korean wave, you may soon be able to find these healthy and colorful dishes on your dinner table. 이지원, Arirang News.
Well, after 16 months and more than 17 million US dollars, New Zealand's flag will remain unchanged. Bruce Harrison is live in the studio with me. Now, Bruce, this was a very expensive referendum. What was the motivation to change this flag in the first place?
Sure, well, one of the main arguments was that it too closely resembles Australia's flag. Have you ever seen both flags, Kanya?
I have, and unless you're from New Zealand, it would be very hard to make a differentiation between the two.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the common characteristics, symbols, is the Union Jack. And like many Commonwealth states, you see the Union Jack. That's the flag of the United Kingdom. Some supporters argue ditching the Union Jack would put more distance between the country and its colonial past. New Zealand Prime Minister John Key was one of the main supporters for change.
I'm naturally a little bit disappointed that the flag didn't change tonight, but I think there's a huge amount that New Zealanders can be very proud of.
For one, Key said he was proud of the 1.2 million people who voted. That's nearly half the country's population. Some critics of the new design, which features a silver fern instead of the Union Jack, said it looked less like a flag and more like a beach towel. India celebrates the Hindu festival of color known as Holi. The holiday, most widely associated with people dousing each other with colored powder, holds a much deeper significance. There are two parts to Holi. The first night is more subdued, when people hold a ritual burning to signify good triumphing over evil. And then day two, the color explosion.
We will enjoy a lot today. There is no discrimination of any kind. We will smear each other with colors, and we will have different sweet dishes today.
But not all take part in the colorful chaos. Some say the powders aren't good for the skin and celebrate with mud instead.
Mud works as a facial pack, and if applied on any part of the skin, it has a positive effect.
The festival purportedly brings together people from all classes and age groups to enjoy themselves.
Well, Bruce, Holi these days is not just limited to India.
That's right. Not just India and the Hindu faith as well, and that's why we're seeing it celebrated in different parts of the world, and maybe the classless aspect to it draws a lot of people.
All right, well, thank you so much for today, and we look forward to more world news tomorrow.
My pleasure.
Well, let's now get a check on the weather update. For that, we have Lee Ji-hyun at the Weather Center. Ji-hyun, we had a bit of a chilly start, but afternoon temperatures, I would say, were quite bearable.
I thought so too, Ganyang, but the huge daily temperature swings and dry conditions are certainly causing many people to get sick. In fact, a dry weather advisory has been issued here in the capital this afternoon. And things will remain dry with partly sunny skies in the western parts, while the eastern regions will see spotty rain tomorrow afternoon, so please bear this in mind. Now, temperature-wise, it's going to be similar to today, as the daily low here in in Seoul will start out at 1, while Daegu and Busan will kick off at 3 and 4 degrees Celsius. And as for the daily highs, Seoul will top out at 11, and Busan and Jeju will also get up to 11 degrees Celsius. Now, it seems like readings will remain relatively cooler until Saturday, but by next week, we'll be able to enjoy beautiful spring conditions, which should be perfect conditions for those who have been awaiting the right conditions to enjoy spring flowers. Now today, the Seoul city government announced the 2016 Hangang River Spring Flower Festival. So, the popular Yeouido Hangang Park is not the only riverside park you can enjoy the colors of this season, as almost all parks along the Hangang River will welcome you with various programs and events. Now the festival will kick off at April 2nd and will last till May 29th. That's all for me today, and back to you, Ganyong, in the studio.
Well, a lot of beautiful flower festivals to look forward to right here in Seoul. That is our broadcast on this Thursday night. I'm Moon Ganyong. Thank you as always for staying with us, and we hope to see you right back here, same time tomorrow on NewsCenter.